You know, after the Cataclysm, the Gates of Death breaking open, there's a lot of different ghosts and goblins, you know, the usual ghouls that will haunt a scene. Not literally in the goblins and ghouls category, but you definitely have ghosts and a variety of them. On top of that, demons. Demons were already present, they're now just broken free or in larger numbers. But on top of all those monstrosities, there is another famous undead that is also present within the Shattered Isles. Hi, hello, and welcome back to Blades in the Dark, the Oops All Rogues tabletop RPG filled with ghosts, demons, and of course, vampires. Which is the topic of this video, is vampires, what they can do for you, what kind of monstrosities are they when your players bump into them. Your scoundrels are swindlers and bandits, and occasionally have to bump into ghosts. A vampire is a whole other thing. And can be one of your players, because yes, you can actually play as a vampire. There's some strings attached, as with any vampire in any setting. But before we get into the mechanics, what are they in the setting? You know, what makes a Blades vampire versus World of Darkness D&D? What's the difference? A good chunk, actually. So, going back to the ghost video. So, with the study of spectrology, there's a lot of new definitions and further defining what specifics are there with ghosts, the ghost field, all this weird life energy stuff that forms electroplasm when refined. Everything does have that life essence, that thing that's used to power most of the machinery within Blades in the Dark, and what ghosts and spirits are made out of. It's that a vampire feeds on, which means it's not just the blood. That's a common legend within the setting, and is still a possibility, but that is nowhere near the common vampire feeding method. In fact, there isn't really any recorded specific feeding method at all. It's unique to each vampire. They have traits and abilities they share, but they all manifest to the individual. Kind of like a Horus license. Mechanically, they do similar things, but how they appear and how they actually all fit together can be wildly different. But the method of feeding and how all these abilities manifest rely to the individual, like the specific scenario and individual vampire. Because there are methods of becoming a vampire, but those are also highly varied. None are directly listed outside of the fact that it's mentioned that, hey, they can happen in the wild sometimes, and there are some rituals that can make a vampire. But yes, in the wild, a vampire can just happen. Potentially not before the Cataclysm, but after the Cataclysm they can just occur. They're rare, but they can happen. So it defines a vampire within the whole field of spectrology, because when it comes to a mortal person, just a living human, that's considered a soul. It's a physical body, your whole corpus, your corpse, with a spirit, or soul. Well, no, the union is called a soul, at least under official imperial accounts. So a vampire is a spirit that has entirely infused into a corpse. I specifically bring up corpse and not body. They can be a body, but it's a body without a spirit, or they are a spirit that consumes the already present spirit in another body. So one of the natural ways they can occur is just if a spirit, specifically of great power or a domineering force, they can consume or destroy the spirit of someone they're already possessing and just stay in the body permanently. Like, they don't have a spirit you can banish. System of magic in this setting, within the spirit world, within the ghost field. They are that thing materially. A vampire has no reflection on the other side of the dark mirror, making them actually immortal. They're no longer actually mortal. They don't have a body ticking away that's going to fade away. They are a perfect fusion of that immortal spirit and physical body. So they're physical. They don't suffer from the madness, kind of spirits. They won't eventually go mad and begin killing everything. They do, however, need to feed off the life essence of other people to sustain this effect. Not to stay alive, they'll just wither and become unconscious. So practically immortal, and when we get into traits, difficult to kill as well. And with that being known, and some of those ancient rites that are now easier to perform because of the Cataclysm and the ghost field and all that, there was a brief period in the 6th century in the setting where there was a popular vampire movement. Like, not a myth, not a secret cult thing, not, a spread or a pandemic of vampirism, no, a popular movement of vampirism, publicly known. But not anymore. Because you see, within that 6th century, the Emperor had ordered the Spirit Wardens to eliminate them, and on the Imperial side to suppress any information about vampirism. For some reason, the Immortal Emperor wants that purged, or a sect within the Spirit Wardens wants that purged. To the point that when they do discover a vampire and are trying to hunt it down, they keep it a secret. But they went from occasionally happening within the world before the Cataclysm to an easy thing to do or make if you had the knowledge. Then after this great vampire hunt and suppression over the knowledge of that, they are now that spooky, strange monster in the darkness again, in the shadows. Also, they might have been killed by the sun, but no one has any records that far back anymore about them, and they're not killed by the remaining fragments of the sun that's hanging in the sky anymore. So, you know, free reign. We touched on some of the mechanics or how they work within the setting, and that brief bit of lore with the 6th century bit. Outside of that, we have no more actual lore or immediate examples or obvious examples of vampires. But instead, we have the mechanics, which tell a little bit more about how a vampire works or thinks. So vampires have their own playbook. You switch over from whatever playbook you were beforehand, and you can only keep one talent, which is any ghost talent. So Ghost and Blank. On top of getting a bunch of bonuses to some actions that help you with being a vampire, you know, the persuasion, the sneaking around, some of the strength, the hunting, but your playbook XP is now gained through showing either your imperial vampiric dominance over mortals or slaying without mercy. Mortals are nothing else but people to potentially elevate as specific individuals or chattel. That is it. They're a flawed reflection of your perfection. And you also get a new vice, which is the hunt. You also get some nice bonuses out of it outside of that word change. You instantly heal 4 ticks whenever you complete a hunt. You know, taking that life essence, rejuvenating this undead body. And to that feeding, we now finally get our limiting factors. Because it's left up to you to answer it when you become a vampire. How do you feed? In what manner? And what mark is left? Because every vampire does leave a mark. That feeding leaves some kind of imprint behind. And not just one that can be detected physically or some kind of aesthetic change. It could be or it could be not, but definitely a magical one. One that is detected by you again, so you can easily find prey again, or any other vampire knowing, well, not touch that prey or theirs. So if you're a vampire, you can detect other people who are being fed on by vampires. And potentially with some whisper shenanigans, you might be able to detect it as well. On the magic side, it does still leave some kind of actual mark you can identify. But it's that broad, those 2 questions. How do you feed? And it just needs to be life essence, so it's that vague ephemeral power. And then what mark does it leave? So the good old blood-sucking vampire does fit that. The mark? Those 2 little bites right there. Or the 2 little teeth marks. And the feeding on the blood. But you could also go a bit more of the direct and gruesome side where you have to eat them. You know, physical parts of someone, bits of cannibalism. Well, you know, they're humans, you're not... Is that cannibalism? Is a vampire actually cannibalism? Are they human? Or it could be aged just through physical touch as parts of people begin to decay or rot and you begin to rejuvenate. You can even go a succubus route, making extremes of emotion or passion. It doesn't need to be directly violent or biting, but it can be. It can be as bloody as you want it to be. But to all this wondrous power, and the first starting trait we're going to be talking about you get when just picking up this playbook, the further you go down your vampiric nature, the further you separate yourself from humanity, you then begin to pick up some of those classic curses. And before the actual arcane curses that are tied to your traits, there's the first mark of a vampire, because you don't actually look, you kind of look undead. You killed a guy, or you are dead, depends how you formed as a vampire. But every vampire is instantly marked by trauma. All 4 ticks, just instantly. So emotionally and mentally, they're not really there. There's no immediate physical difference until we get some of the traits and curses, strictures, that define and set a vampire apart from another normal human, or at least the look of them. The actions and mentality of one, though, that goes to that inherent sense of dominance and god complex, and then you throw on some mix of these 4 traumas on top of it. If you already had some in life, you just add on to that, going up to 4 already, but if you're a fresh slate, you were mentally sound of mind before you became a vampire, you're not after. But now onto the actual first trait, undead. Pretty straightforward, you know, you're undead now. This is where you pick up all that trauma and you pick the ones that specifically define how your vampiric nature is reflected. How does it express itself? So it's not random, it is how your vampiric powers are manifesting. You're just some kind of Malkavian with all that baggage. Any kind of arcane attack, so anything magical, gains potency against you, more effective. And if you would ever die from a level 3 harm or die after that, you don't. You just go unconscious. Again, that withered form. You can push yourself, or if you have someone else to help you, just need to feed to get out of that. However, you were even more vulnerable in that form, and any kind of arcane attack, any bit of magic or electroplasm, will kill you. Permanently. Your XP tracks are a bit longer, a little harder to actually level up. But when it comes to stress, you go up to 12 from 9. You can handle a lot more, or at least a good chunk more. And then going down to the other traits. These are just BS. Not actually BS, but BS vampire magic. A lot more freeform, way less like a defined mechanic with some of these. Okay. We'll then go on the strictures afterwards, but first off, Arcane Sight. Spend 1 stress and expand your senses beyond human means. You know, super hearing, super sight, that sort of thing. No. You do get all that. You can also then hear people's thoughts. Or see arcane items or any kind of secret or something you'd be missing. See imperfect darkness, you can see invisible things or other arcane creatures that are in hiding. It's just whatever. There's an etc at the end of that ability. And that lasts several minutes when you spend that stress. Just sense everything, just know. Next is Dark Talent. Pick one of the 3 categories of actions. That cap goes from 4 to 5. For your dice pools. You also add 1 dice to the resistance test with any of those. Sinister Guile, a really good one, not for innately the immediate rolls, but you get to pick one whenever you go into a downtime. You either get an additional downtime activity, just be able to do more things, or extra dice to every downtime activity roll. That's just a really nice buff. Terrible power. Spend 1 stress and you can basically race and fist fight a demon. You have the equivalent of that same strength and vile speed that we were talking about in the demons video. Outrun a carriage, leap to the top of a building, break metal beams with your hands or stone walls. And then lastly, avoid in the echo. Spirits cannot see you and cannot harm you in any way. Again, you're already dead. You're an undead. They have no means to actually like draw life essence from you or even care. You can also take 2 stress to have living people be affected by this ability as well. And they just happen to avert their eyes or seemingly can't look at you. And due to the open-ended nature, it can be various forms. You either go invisible, they literally just can't stare, they blank in their own memory when you pass them. But all of it's the same in that they can't bring themselves to witness you. And there is an exception to that spirit one as well. Some particularly powerful spirits, so, you know, if you have like a main enemy in a game, or spirits that are predetermined and like modified or enhanced to hunt down or fight vampires, they can do that, but those are rare. Your average ghosts and even more terrifying creatures out in the Deathlands just don't care about you, which means if you didn't need to feed, vampires just could be living out in the Deathlands. Heck, they could be just hiding out there waiting. And now we're on to the strictures. So after undead, the starting trait you get when picking up this playbook, every additional trait you end up taking a stricture, so the vampire curses. You also get to pick these strictures when you pick up those traits, so you don't have to immediately go down this list in this order. First up is slumber. So during a downtime, one of your activities needs to be resting in a dark place. Pitch black. Or you take a good chunk of stress if you don't do this. Not literally resting in the coffin, but having to avoid life, the sun, or whatever little light there is. Next is forbiddance. You cannot enter a location without permission from the owner. Which, man, for Blades in the Dark, you know, the all rogues tabletop RPG, that can put a snag in some things. Makes breaking in way more difficult. Next is repelled. All those ghost charms, or things that would ward off demons, ghosts, other evil spirits, particularly ghosts, they affect you now as well. Again, you're an undead. You were a spirit, and kind of are. You can take stress instead of being repelled by these, so forcing yourself into these wardings. Bestial. So, when you overindulge in feeding or fail to feed, both ends of that spectrum, your vampiric nature and monstrous nature become very obvious, and this lasts until you feed again without overindulging. So could last a while. And again, just like the situations of the specific vampires, depends how it manifests, down to the individual vampire. Could be the classic fangs, Nosferatu, giant bat head, something bug-like, or demonic in appearance or visage, or just more corpse-like. You do look like the corpse that you are. Depends. Make it whatever you want, both when playing as one and if you're ever running one. And then lastly is bound. You can never leave this physical body. If you do, you're immediately destroyed. So this goes for specific arcane rituals, some other talents or items that allow you to project yourself out of your body. You can't do any of that. You're bound to this. That is also where that nature of the spirit infusing into the body comes from. Because you are technically just a spirit possessing a body until you get bound. That's an ancient vampire. That's that eventual diffusion. Before that, you are just a spirit possessing a corpse that you killed the other spirit of, or destroyed, or was already absent and was just hollow. But those are the classical or mythologized bloodsuckers of vampire. Not a nope, not the Masquerade book yet, not the funny Masquerade, of Blades in the Dark. One of the fun little details isn't just in running them, though they are extremely fun to run. It's the fact they're nearly impossible to permanently hunt down. They can happen naturally. There are still rituals and rites and cults actively making them or sending others into their ranks. These immortal undead, these people that view themselves as the next step within this world after the cataclysm, amongst the lands of the dead, with the living only to remain as their chattel. And with the secrecy and even the hunting, they still haven't eliminated them. If anything, they've only gotten better at hiding and spreading. Thank you for watching the video on Vampires, our other fiend from Blades in the Dark. We've only got one more. On top of just wanting to get back into Blades in the Dark or keep that going from the demons, I've been in a vampire mood. So, and in the usual nature of a lot of the actual arcane abilities, or the specifics of certain traits or talents within Blades in the Dark, There is such a large window open for how vampires manifest, or the particular vampires you can bump into. Like, they can feed in so many different ways and leave their mark in so many different ways. Like, it could be purely monstrous, it could be that succubus angle, it could be the classic bloodsucker, it could be even more spiritual or ephemeral, like it's the spirit of the body of the vampire reaches out and like physically strangles your spirit. Or you could even get more physical, like the body begins to change and warp because of the nature it is. It's something that's not supposed to exist. It's a breaking of the cycle. Then again, to those scholars within the book saying it's the breaking of the cycle was already broken when the cataclysm happened. It's breaking the new cycle, I guess. But because of how freeform it is, I want to hear what kind of vampires you can make or have made or seen in the comments below. Get the creative juices flowing, or share different ideas or schemes that you've seen with others. Anywho, thanks again for watching, a thank you to my patrons, and have a nice day.